Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn about IELTS Speaking Part 1. The topic of our lesson is high school. High school. Now remember that high school is also called secondary school. So if the examiner talks to you about high school or secondary school, they both mean exactly the same. In this lesson, we're going to look at some questions that the examiner is likely to ask you. We are also going to look at some sample answers. At the end of this lesson, I'm going to reveal two more questions that the examiner is most likely going to ask you about high school or secondary school. So remember, at the end of the lesson, I'm going to give you two more questions. Now, let us begin our lesson, but before we begin, have you subscribed to the channel? If you haven't, then please subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Now let's begin our lesson. Question 1. What subjects did you study in high school and which one was your favorite subject? What subjects did you study in high school and which one was your favorite subject? In this question, the examiner wants you to identify all the subjects that you studied in high school or secondary school, and then he or she wants you to state which one was your favorite subject. So you can answer this question by saying, my secondary school education lasted for 4 years, during which I studied 6 subjects, namely maths, geography, history, biology, physics, and French, which was my most favorite of them all because I always scored the highest marks. My secondary school education lasted for 4 years, during which I studied 6 subjects, namely maths, geography, history, biology, physics, and French, which was my favorite of them all because I always scored the highest marks. Now, in that answer, I have identified all the subjects that I studied in high school. That is maths, geography, history, biology, physics, and French. I have also identified my most favorite subject in high school, and that is French. But I have also provided the examiner with the reason why French was my most favorite subject, and that is because I always scored the highest marks in French. Now, you also notice that at the beginning, I pointed out to the examiner that my secondary school education or high school education lasted for 4 years. So I have provided extra details around the question. And that is what the examiner expects you to do. When the examiner asks you what subjects did you study in high school and which one was your favorite, you should not simply say maths, geography, history, biology, and French. French was my favorite. Now, although your answer is correct, you have not proved to the examiner that you have a good command of the English language, that you can express yourself fully using English. So for each question, try and provide 3 to 4 ideas. Join your ideas together using linking words. You can see in my answer, I have used during which, I have used and, I have also used because. All those linking words have helped me to put my ideas together in a complex sentence. You notice that whole sentence is a complex sentence because I have more than 2 verbs. Okay? Something else that is very important for you to note is that I have answered using the past tense because we are talking about high school here. It was years ago, so it was in the past. And also you notice the question is in the past tense. What subjects did you study? Did you study? That is in the past tense. And which one was your favorite? Which one was, not is, was, meaning years ago. So when the question is in the past tense, then your answer should also be in the past tense. In that answer, you see I have used the verbs such as lasted. My secondary school education lasted. Lasted is a verb that is in the past tense, during which I studied. I studied. That verb is also in the past tense. And then French was my most favorite. Was is also in the past tense. And then the next verb is scored. Scored is in the past tense. So I'm using the past tense because the question is also in the past tense. Okay? Be extremely careful with that because really the one thing that determines your band is your tense. If you get your tense wrong, if you get your grammar tenses wrong, no matter how good your vocabulary is, no matter how good everything else is, as long as your tenses are not correct, you use incorrect verbs, you have poor subject-verb agreement, you will automatically score a low band. So be extremely careful with that. Now let's look at question 2. What was your high school like? What was your high school like? In that question, the examiner wants you to describe your high school life. What was it like? Describe to them what it was like. Did you like it? Okay. Was it enjoyable? Was it the worst time of your life? Did you get bullied a lot, for example? What was your high school like? The examiner wants you to talk about what was it like, okay? Now you notice once more that question is in the past tense. We have was, what was? So your answer should be also in the past tense. Now you can answer that question by saying, well, high school was great fun. I had 2 best friends with whom I attended all the lessons and hung out with on all the lunch breaks. I never got into trouble with any teachers, so it was delightful. Well, high school was great fun. I had 2 best friends with whom I attended all the lessons and hung out with on all the lunch breaks. I never got into trouble with any teachers, so it was delightful. Now, in that answer, you notice that I have used a number of words to describe my time back in high school. That high school was great fun. And that is because I had 2 best friends with whom I attended all the lessons and I hung out with them on all the lunch breaks. Also, I had fun in high school because I never got into trouble with any teachers. So it was delightful. Now you notice in that answer, I have used a number of connectors, okay? I have also used a number of sentence structures. You notice the first sentence, well, high school was great fun. That is a simple sentence because we have just one verb and the verb is was and is in the past tense because the question is also in the past tense. And then I say, I had 2 best friends. The verb there is had. It's also in the past tense. I attended. Attended is a verb. It's in the past tense. And then hung out with. That hung out with is also in the past tense. Hanged. I never got into trouble. Got is also in the past tense. So it was delightful. Was is also in the past tense. So I'm using the past tense the whole time because the question is also in the past tense. Okay? Now let's move on to question 3. What was your least favorite subject? In this question, the examiner wants to know, out of all the subjects that you studied in high school or secondary school, which one did you like the least? You hated it. Which one? Which subject? Now you can answer this question by saying, my least favorite subject was physics. Actually, I hated it. That was mainly because I couldn't understand the practical experiments. The teacher was quite unfriendly too. My least favorite subject was physics. Actually, I hated it. That was mainly because I couldn't understand the practical experiments. The teacher was quite unfriendly too. So in that answer, I have not just identified my least favorite subject, which was physics, but I have explained why I hated it. And that was because 1, I couldn't understand the practical experiments in the lab, and 2, because the teacher was quite unfriendly, okay? So do not simply tell the examiner, my least favorite subject was physics. Explain why. Why you hated it. Why you did not like that particular subject, okay? And you notice I have used once more the past tense because the question is, what was? The question is in the past tense, so I answer in the past tense. My least favorite subject was physics. The verb was is in the past tense. That is also a simple sentence. Actually, I hated it. The verb hated is in the past tense. Again, you have a simple sentence there. That was mainly because I couldn't understand the practical experiments. You notice once more there, the verb was is in the past tense. And then finally, the teacher was quite unfriendly. I have the verb was again in the past tense. Okay? Now let's move on to question 4. Which subject do you think is the most useful later in your adult life? Which subject do you think is the most useful later in your adult life? In this question, the examiner wants to know, out of all the subjects that you studied in high school or in secondary school, which subject do you think is most useful later on when you're an adult? Which subject can you apply later in your real life? Okay? Now, to answer that question, you can say, I would say biology because as an adult, it is very important that you know what to eat in order to stay healthy. In biology, you are taught how the body functions and the importance of a balanced diet. I would say biology because as an adult, it is very important that you know what to eat in order to stay healthy. In biology, you are taught how the body functions and the importance of a balanced diet. Now, in that answer, I have explained first of all, I identified the subject that I think is the most useful later in your adult life. And in my case, I identified the subject as biology. But after that, you need to explain why. That's why I use the linking word because. As an adult, it is very important that you know what to eat in order to stay healthy. And in biology, you are taught how the body functions and the importance of a balanced diet. So, I have identified the subject, which is biology. I have explained why it is useful later in life by saying that in biology, you are taught how the body functions and the importance of a balanced diet. And as an adult, it is very important that you know what to eat in order to stay healthy. Now, in that sentence, I have used the past tense in my verbs. I would say, okay? In biology, you are taught how the body functions and the importance of a balanced diet. In that sentence, I have also used a number of connectors or linking words such as because, in order, and and. Now let's move on to question 5. Which part of your secondary school life did you enjoy the most? In this question, the examiner wants you to identify what you liked the most. Which part? What was your favorite memory? What is it that is your favorite memory of your secondary school or your high school life? Which part of your secondary school life did you enjoy the most? As a high school student, there are so many things that happen in your 4 years. Which part of it of school life did you enjoy the most? Now you can answer this question by saying, once a year we had a talent show which I really liked because it was great fun to see everyone showcasing their dancing, acting, or singing talents. Once a year, we had a talent show which I really liked because it was great fun to see everyone showcasing their dancing, acting, or singing talents. So in that answer, I have identified the favorite part of my secondary school life. And that was when we used to have a talent show. Okay, but that's not all. I have explained to the examiner why it was my favorite part, why it still is my most favorite part of my secondary school life. And that is because it was great fun to see everyone showcasing, okay, their dancing, their acting, or singing talents, okay? I really enjoyed the talent shows. It used to happen once a year, and everyone would show their dancing, their acting, or their singing talents, okay? So I really enjoyed it. So for me, that was my most favorite part of my secondary school life. So which part of your secondary school life did you enjoy the most? Remember, the question is in the past tense, so you have to speak in the past tense. Once a year, we had. Had is in the past tense, okay? And then the next verb is liked, which is also in the past tense, okay? Now, I said that I was going to reveal 2 more questions that you're likely to get asked by the examiner about high school or secondary. So, are you ready for the 2 extra questions? Now, the first question is, describe yourself as a student. Or the examiner might ask you, what sort of student were you? Okay? So the question is, describe yourself as a high school student. Describe yourself as a high school student. Or the examiner might ask you, what sort of students were you in high school? What sort of student were you in high school? Now, when the examiner asks you that question, they want you to use adjectives to describe your character as a student. So you need to know some words that you can use to describe your personality or your character as a high school student. Now, you can answer that question by saying, I was quite obedient and respectful as a high school student because I always did what was asked of me by my teachers. Also, I worked really hard and by doing my homework, and to my classmates, I was very friendly, helpful, and supportive. I was quite obedient and respectful as a high school student because I always did what was asked of me by my teachers. Furthermore, I worked really hard and I always ensured that I did my homework. To my classmates, I was very friendly, helpful, and supportive. Now, in my answer, I have used a number of words to describe myself as a student. First of all, I pointed out that I was obedient. 2, I was respectful. And I explained why. And the reason was because I always did what was asked of me by my teachers. I also said that I was hardworking because I always ensured that I did my homework. And to my classmates, I was friendly, helpful, and supportive. Friendly, helpful, and supportive. So be prepared for that sort of question. Now, the next question that the examiner might ask you about high school or secondary school is, describe your teachers. What sort of teachers did you have? In that question, the examiner expects you to use some words to describe the teachers or the personality of the teachers that you had in high school. Now, you can answer that question when the examiner asks you, can you describe your teachers? What sort of teachers did you have in high school? Now, you can say, majority of them were very hardworking and passionate about their subjects, with an exception of the physics teacher who was lazy and unfriendly and always absent. Majority of my teachers in high school were very hardworking and passionate about their subjects, with an exception of the physics teacher who was lazy, unfriendly, and always absent. Majority of my teachers in high school were very hardworking and passionate about their subjects, with an exception of the physics teacher who was lazy, unfriendly, and always absent. So in that answer, I have described my teachers. I have said majority, okay? It is very important that you use the word majority, or you can say in general, okay? My teachers in high school were, number one, very hardworking, two, passionate about their subjects. But there was an exception, and that is the physics teacher who was lazy, unfriendly, and always absent. Now, if you're not very confident when it comes to words that describe people, for example, teachers or students or yourself, feel free to have a look at my playlist on vocabulary. I actually have a video on how to words that you use to describe your teacher. I also have a video about words that you use to describe people, words that you use to describe teenagers, words that you use to describe women and men, okay? So feel free to have a look at that video to boost your vocabulary, okay? To ensure that you have vocabulary that is suitable for a high band in case you get that question, okay? Now, this brings me to the last section of our lesson, where I'm going to round up and give you my final tips to ensure that you pass your IELTS speaking test with a very high band. Tip number one, ensure that you understand the question. Tip number two, for each of the questions, provide 2 to 3 or 4 ideas. Tip number three, join your ideas together using linking words like I have done in my sample answers. The next tip, ensure that you use a variety of sentence structures in your answers. Use simple, compound, and complex sentences. If you're not familiar with how to form those sentences, feel free to have a look at my playlist. I have a video on the 3 types of sentences in English, and I also have a video on different types of connectors and how we use them. So feel free to have a look at my playlist, look at those 2 videos and familiarize yourself with the different types of sentence structures and how we form those sentences using connectors. And the next tip, ensure that you use the correct vocabulary for the questions that the examiner is asking you. And also try and use the correct intonation, which means raise and lower your voice for emphasis. And the last and the most important of them all is that you have to ensure that you use the correct tense or the correct grammar when you're giving your answers. That is actually the most important. As soon as you speak in the incorrect tense, then your band automatically starts dropping. Now, when it comes to grammar and tenses, ensure that you're speaking. For example, in my case, in this lesson, I mainly spoke in the past tense because the questions are in the past tense. Remember, you also need to ensure that you're using things like prepositions correctly, okay? And finally, if you're planning to sit for your IELTS speaking test in the next few days or in the near future, I wish you all the best. Remember, practice makes perfect. Familiarize yourself with as many topics as possible. I have a lot of videos on IELTS speaking part 1. I also have a lot of videos on IELTS speaking part 2 and part 3 cue cards. So feel free, familiarize yourself with them as much as possible because you just never know where your question is going to come from. And these topics that I am uploading videos about are topics that you are for this month and the next month. So please be prepared. Now, if you found this lesson helpful, then give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this video on all your social media platforms. Now, thank you very much and see you in our next lesson. Bye bye.